Om Shri Sadgurave Namah. I bow down at the holy lotus feet of true Guru, whose words of wisdom are like mighty sunbeams to dispel the darkness of ignorance. Guru, the beneficence personified, takes the disciple to meet the Supreme Being. I offer my obeisance again and again to such a benevolent Guru. Blessed is Guru, whose glory is indescribable in words. Whatever little I could or would say is only because of his compassionate grace. Hello viewers, Jai Guru, Radha Swami, Vaheguru, Satyaram Sa, Namaste. Welcome to the third part of our satsang talks on Santmat. Before we proceed ahead, let me share my screen to you. I hope the screen is visible. Sorry. Okay. As usual, we are going to have a brief recapitulation of whatever we had discussed in the second part, and then we'll proceed ahead to discuss and to learn some more about the true nature of God. Just a note on the pace of oration. As very rightly observed by one of the respected viewers, that the pace of speaking has been deliberately kept slow. This is because of my personal experience. I have found at times that while watching, like serials from the West or movies like Bollywood movies, etc., then many a time I am not able to comprehend the conversation. And I found that it's not because I could not understand what was being taught. It was mainly because the speed at which they were talking was such that by the time my brain could process a few words, they had spoken many more words, which made it very difficult for me to comprehend. Because when we are listening to people who have got, say, very different accent and they speak at fast pace, then it might be difficult to understand what is being taught. And the topic we are going to discuss is even otherwise abstruse, and therefore I thought it proper to deliberately speak slowly, that so that some of my, say, viewers who are from outside India, like mainly from USA and Great Britain and say Australia, etc., who have got quite a different accent of speaking English, and therefore to ensure that they are able to understand large portion of whatever I am trying to say, I have deliberately ensured that I speak slowly and that I would follow for all the lectures to follow. Now, recap of part 2, we had seen that whatever we see in the universe around us are having limits, they are having boundaries, so that they are limited or finite, either in terms of time or in terms of space or both. Then the question is that what lies beyond all that we see? This is a very difficult question to answer. We had seen that things could be very big, very large, gigantic, but still we know that they are having limits. Then what lies beyond them? Maharshi Mehi Paramhans would say that this question would never leave you unless and until you have agreed, in principle at least, that there is an infinite being. We had also seen that by adding any number of finites, we cannot create one infinite. Because however large might be the number of finite beings or things, when somewhere we'll have to stop adding, and where we stop adding, there itself we can find the limits or the bounds of the accumulated, of the composite large behemoth that we have created. And therefore, large number of finites by coming together cannot make one infinite. An infinite being exists and remains always. He has been always, and he will be ever. He will be forever. Okay, that is, he is, as we'll see a bit later, that he is without a beginning and without an end. Okay. We had also seen that that infinite entity has been called by different names in different parts of the world and by different, wise people. Names might be different, but they all refer to the same infinite being, which can be one only, which has to be non-dual. Advaita Siddhant is very popular in Indian Upanishads. That is, A means not, Dvait means two or more. So that infinite being God is non-dual. Why? We have seen that if for the sake of argument we assume that there are two or more infinities, then the question would be, where does the second start? Second cannot start unless and until first has come to an end. And the moment we find that it has come to an end, either in time or in space, we have found out its limits and its infiniteness gets lost. So therefore, infinity can be one only. It has to be non-dual. Sorry. And we had also seen that many of the exclusive virtues or specialities or descriptions or attributes that are associated with God, they would become evident if we acknowledge the existence of one infinite being. How? That is going to be the topic of our discussion in today's talk. But before we do that, before we proceed on that, one question that might have come, that might have arisen in some of our minds, that after all, why is it that we are discussing the true nature of God? Why it is compulsory to know about how God is? This question, the answer to this question is, as scriptures say, as true sages or sants say, that see, every creature, every being seeks to attain to acquire peace, happiness, and to be beyond the clutches of bondage, of control of somebody else. This is a very natural craving that comes to all of us. Nobody wants to be unhappy, nobody wants to be sick, and nobody wants to die. But the fact of life is, the cruel fact of life is that not everything that happens is always as we wish it to be. We don't want sickness, but it comes into our lives. We don't want miseries. We don't want unfavorable circumstances, but they do come to us. And most of all, nobody wants to die. But an undeniable fact is that with the best of our efforts, we just cannot avoid death. And the very feeling which comes to us at different points of time is that things as they are happening, they are not as per our wish. Even though we would wish them to happen in a particular way, they go different way. That is, there are things which are beyond our control. Then the question is that how total liberation, how everlasting, eternal bliss, contentment could be acquired, could be achieved. All the scriptures and sants say in unison that total liberation and the resulting bliss can never be had without practicing devotion to God, without practicing bhakti. The question would be, why so? The answer to this question we will seek in, say, sometime from now, say about 4, 5, 6 lectures from now. Why we must practice devotion to God if we want to be eternally happy, if we want to be beyond the grips of transmigration, that is the unending cycle, seemingly unending cycle of births and deaths. Why devotion is a condition for that we keep for our future lectures. But now, if we agree with their teachings that if we want to attain bliss, if we want to be free, totally free, if we want to attain the state of complete liberation, salvation, emancipation, then it is compulsory to practice devotion to God. And in order to determine the correct way of devotion to God, it is a prerequisite to know beforehand the true nature of God. Because unless and until we know about the destination that we want to reach, we could, say, go anywhere else in wrong directions. So first we must gather complete information about the goal that we want to accomplish. Okay, only then we can think of the ways how that could be done. So therefore, before we could know what is the right way to devotion, what is the right skill or tact of devotion, it is important to know how God is, so that we could ascertain what should be the right means to attain to Him. Okay, so therefore, this discussion that we have been doing since the past lecture, and will be building upon in the lectures to follow about the existence of God. This is a famous quote from Albert Einstein, who was, say, arguably the greatest scientist of the 20th century, and he says that he And all genuine scientists, they become convinced about the existence of a spirit which is vastly superior to that of us, and the one in the face of which we must feel humble or modest. As a describing about the nature of God, Maharshi Mehi Paramhansji, who is one of the greatest exponents of Santmat, one of the true gurus, he says that that absolute or the loftiest being, he is without a beginning and end, who is unbounded, unborn, beyond the reach of senses, that is unintelligible, all-pervading, and yet beyond pervasiveness. He and he alone should be considered the Supreme Lord and the base or essence or the mainstay of one and all that exists. Okay. Actually, it's a small part, starting part of the principles of Santmat that every satsangi, every initiate in the lineage of Maharshi Mehi Paramhans recites every morning during their prayers. Okay, so this is just a small part of that. Now let us proceed to further talk. We had seen that infinite or something which is truly infinite has to be one only or non-dual. What is also true that such an infinite being must also be an indivisible whole. Indivisible means he cannot be divided into more than one pieces. He cannot be broken into number of fragments, which again could be as a added together to form the whole. No, that is simply not the case. Okay, God is indivisible, unlike we could, like, say, if we take a piece of paper or a metallic sheet or wooden sheet, anything, say a clay, a pot, and we could break into a number of pieces. The same way, we cannot divide the infinity into a number of pieces. Because when we say a number of pieces, this numbering will start only when there is a gap between one piece and the second piece. So that we say, see, this is one piece and this is the second piece. This is the third piece that we have divided the infinity into. The question would come to our mind. The question that would crop up is that what lies between those two pieces? And if we try to answer that, if that is the empty space, then Sadguru Maharshi Mehi Paramhans said that then that empty space would precede, would be a precursor of that infinite being, and that will have to be assumed as. So therefore, infinity cannot be broken, cannot be divided into number of pieces. Okay, to understand how that could be, the best example that could be cited is that of space. Okay, that is known as Akash in Sanskrit or Hindi. So space is indivisible. There are innumerable buildings that exist on Earth. Earth itself is there. There are many other stellar bodies. All of them exist within space, and space exists through all of them. Like, say, I have built one room, erected one room, and I enter inside, enter into that room. Then what I see the four walls, the ceiling, and the floor, and as a space that is enclosed by these four walls, ceiling, and the floor. And suppose it has got a window, and if I open the window, then I see that a larger, much larger space, okay, could be seen outside the four walls of the building or the room. The inner space that we see within the four walls, what is it? Naturally, we will say it is a part of that outer greater space. Okay, this smaller space was formed only because we erected the four walls and roof. But is it really so? Is the smaller space contained within the four walls different from the larger space outside? Any student of science would disagree because space is so subtle, so fine, that it permeates through the walls, and the space that we see separated due to the four walls appearing as different from the outer larger space is actually one indivisible part. The space is one continuum which continues in an unbroken way. It pervades, it passes through, but it exists within the walls also, inside the walls, and outside the walls. It is one space. We cannot divide. You keep several pots, and sky or space would be contained within all of them. But space is present, immanent through the walls of those pots also. So it is one undivided space. Now think of something which permeates this space also. How that would be, that infinite would be. Will it be ever possible to divide that? That which can be divided, could be divided, cannot be truly infinite. And infinity must be indivisible, akhandaniya satta, that is known as in Sanskrit. Khanda means piece, and means not, that which cannot be divided into pieces. So, such is the nature of infinity. He is one alone, one only, and he is indivisible. And the second thing, that he must be without a beginning and an end. He must be beyond birth and death. We have seen this. This is finiteness in terms of time and space. That something began at this point in space or at this time, okay, then we have found out its limits, okay, in terms of time or space. And suppose we say that we don't know when it began or where it began. We are not, say, sure of its beginning. So its beginning, you say it is infinite, but we know for sure that it is going to end here or then at so many times, so much time from now. Then again, we have found its limits. So therefore, that which is essentially infinite, it has to be beginningless entity. It has to be endless. It must be unborn. It must be immortal or undying. It must be an eternal entity. So therefore, that which is infinity, that which is infinite, must be without a beginning, without a birth, without an end, without a death. He always is. That's all. Then the third thing is that that which is truly infinite, all these properties we are deriving only from our agreement on one principle, that there must exist at least one, not at least, there must exist one and one only infinite being. Once we agree upon this in principle, then all these are, say, natural corollaries that come out of this. All these attributes, because I don't find a better way, or virtues or qualities that we find invested in God, becomes very easily explainable. All the virtues or properties that are described to be associated with God in many of the scriptures, they become very easy of explanation once we agree to the existence of one infinite being. What is third one? That a truly infinite being must be all pervading, omnipresent, and yet beyond pervasiveness also. The first part is relatively easy to understand because we have seen if it is infinity, it must be everywhere. If we could find out, determine even the tiniest of spaces or corners anywhere in the universe and say that, see, here we have found a place where that infinity is missing. The moment, however small it could be, around that place, you will find the limits of that infinity. So therefore, if something has to be truly infinite, it has to be everywhere. That is, it must be all-pervading. But what is intriguing to understand is that how something which is all-pervading could also be beyond pervasiveness. To understand this, we have to understand that in order for something to be pervading, what is presupposed is the existence of something which is there to be pervaded, to pervade. Unless and until there is something which could be pervaded, there is nothing that could pervade it. That is, pervasiveness presupposes duality, at least existence of two things. One that is ready, that can be pervaded, and another that pervades it. Pervading and pervaded. There must be two entities. So, infinity is all pervading is easy to understand. Now we have seen that things could be big or small. Finite things, limited things could be big or small. But however big or large or expansive or gigantic they could be, they must end somewhere. Our universe also has got an end. Science tells about that because nowadays we are hearing, say, feeble talks of the concept of multiple universes also coming. Multiverses that are known as. That is, now some of the scientists are coming to agreement that universes could be more than one. And we also are told that universe is expanding, that we live in, universe that we live in, inhabit, is expanding at a very fast rate. How something could expand if there is no space available outside it to expand? That means it has got it. Only that which is limited can expand or contract. Okay. So because there are more than one universes or because our universe is expanding, it goes on to explain that it has got bounds. It has got limits. It is finite. Now there is something which is finite and there is something else which is infinite. So the infinite can pervade that which is finite. So a truly infinite being, if we call it him God, so God pervades the whole of universe or all the universes that might exist. So all the universes are the pervaded ones which are pervaded by one only infinite being, that is God. But once we start moving away, 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 and once we reach the end of one universe, or say of all the universes, we cross the boundaries of all the universes, and then where we will reach, we will come to where God alone exists. Infinity alone exists. There is nothing else. Simply, there is nothing else. Now, if there is nothing else, who will be pervaded? And if there is nothing to pervade, who will pervade? That is, if there is no disciple, how can one be a guru, preceptor? If there is no son, how could we be father? Similarly, if there is nothing to be pervaded, the very concept of pervasiveness loses its meaning. Because pervasiveness, as I told, it presupposes the existence of something which could be pervaded. But we have reached beyond all things and beings that exist. And then we find that only one infinity remains. There is no other entity. That means there is nothing to be pervaded. So therefore, the very term, the very concept of pervasiveness loses its meaning. It ceases just. So there, where there is nothing apart from God Himself, then there is nothing which could be pervaded, and therefore, in that state, God is said to be beyond pervasiveness. Where there is anything, small or big, to be pervaded, God is considered to be, God is described as pervasive, pervading, immanent, indwelling. But when all things that exist, they cease, that is, we have moved beyond their boundaries, then the concept of pervasiveness also goes. So, so long there is something to be pervaded, God is pervading, and where everything, we have moved beyond everything that could exist, then God, it can be said that He is beyond pervasiveness. I hope I have been able to understand, explain the concept. Uh, if there is anything you want, you observe is missing, that a point I have not touched upon, or my explanation remains incomplete or unconvincing, I'll say, request you with folded hands that please do mention them in your as your feedback in the comment box. If I know the answer, I'll be so glad to explain, because while speaking, not every point comes to mind. I may miss some of the points. So therefore, I very humbly plead to you that please write frankly that you missed this point, or this explanation of you is unconvincing because of such and such things. Then I'll try to, say, cover those missing points. Okay, I think, say, for enough time we have discussed, and um, the presentations, they are enjoyed better, understood better if they are kept smaller. I had, planned to discuss all these points, but one in this slide remains to be covered, that that which is infinity, it, it has to be, it must be larger than the largest. And at the same time, it must be tinier, finer, subtler than the subtlest. That is, two very contradicting properties are found in God, or that which is truly infinite. It must be most expansive, larger, largest that could be conceptualized, and at the same time, it must be tiniest or subtlest also. How we'll see in the next lecture. Not only this, there are many other, say, properties or qualities that very naturally come to be associated with the concept of infiniteness, like, say, an infinite being or God, he must be shapeless, he must not have any shape, or formless, he must be soundless also, totally silent. And these two could be combined into one statement, that he must be beyond name and form. He must be motionless, quiet, still. We are attributing so many attributes to him, but actually he is attributeless. He is beyond unreal and real. All these things we'll see in the, say, discussions to come. Say, we stop for the time being in this talk. I thank you all for your patient and generous listening. Thank you very much. Jai Guru, Vahe Guru, Radha Swami, Satyaram Sa, Namaste. Soon we'll meet in the fourth part of this series. Thank you so much. Jai.